Welcome to this podcast is making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is episode 173. You know, today's guest from Fools Rush In, Return of the Living Dead 2, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Weird Science, and of course, from her two Seinfeld episodes as Eva in the Limo and as Audrey in the Pie. Please welcome Suzanne Snyder. Suzanne, thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Suzanne, so happy to have you on the program. Like we just said off air, one of the most requested guest stars our fans have wanted. So I'm so happy you're on the show. So take us back, the Limo, right? This is February of 1992, not too long ago.
No, not too long.
One of our favorite episodes of all time. You played Eva, of course. Tell us a little bit about how that role came about. Was there an audition process? How'd you land that role?
So there was an audition. Everybody wanted to get on Seinfeld as an actor or an actress or actor now, really, right? We all wanted to get on the show because it was a great show. It was really popular. So I got this audition and I guess we were in the office and Jerry and Jason were sitting on the couch, if I remember correctly. And it was in a limo, right? So it's a little bit different. So I kind of made this, I guess, bold or daring choice to be outside and to enter into the limo and to get into the limo. And yeah, I mean, I guess it went really well because I got the part.
Yeah, it's interesting. And we were just talking about it before we formally started, and it was really my first question to ask you is. You say it's unique, this episode, and it very much is, especially during the time that it came out. I mean, you didn't see episodes of a sitcom on network television that had to do with neo-Nazis and guns and, all kinds of, violence like this, right? So, and we even talked to one of the writers of this episode, Mark Jaffe, who's his contribution to the episode was Jerry and George get someone else's limo, and then it was like, okay, what do we do from there? And he said Larry Charles came up with the idea of them being Nazis, but he said it took months before they actually decided to do that because they were like, that's a little too much, it's a little too much, but they decided to do it. Curious from your perspective, reading the script for the first time. What were your thoughts just as a sitcom? It's supposed to be a light, fluffy, network sitcom, and you're reading the script. I'm a neo-Nazi. There's guns. Like, what was your take, coming into it just from the script part of it?
Yeah. Well, so, when you read for sitcoms, you didn't get to read the script first. You were just given a scene or two scenes. So I didn't have the whole script until I got the part and we did the table read. I mean, I knew what Eva was, right? Because they give you a little breakdown. It's called of what the character was like. And, I thought it could be serious and really funny at the same time, right? It could kind of teeter in this weird, uncomfortable space, if that makes sense, which is really fun.
Yeah.
With those guys.
So, yeah. Interesting. You mentioned you got the part by ducking into the limo. So just take us back. On the audition process, you mentioned Jason was there, or was it Jerry? Like, who are you, or Larry? Who are you kind of trying out for? And was there like a simulated car there? I'm just trying to.
No, there was no car. It was just a couch, and both Larrys were there, right? Because there was Larry David and Larry Charles at the time. And if I remember correctly, maybe Jason wasn't there and it was just Jerry. And I don't know. It just, I don't, so just so you know, I just started doing podcasts. When I act, it's different. As Suzanne, I'm very shy. I'm very private. But supposedly they said I gave the best audition they'd ever seen in any
wow, that's
wow.
I mean, that's high praise.
It was a good day for me.
Well,
We
yeah,
always have good auditions, right? It was a good day.
yeah. And the way you said, that it's dark and could be funny, that like that's where Larry Charles lives. A lot of his episodes have that undertone to them, and this was, a perfect example of it. And your part, I mean, the way you say your lines, even you're like whispering with this intensity that's like so involved. Like, whose choice was that to kind of give the character that like you're very like intense, I guess is the word, but it's very funny and also has that same like level of like almost darkness to it that like George is attracted to even at one point, right? But like was like whose choice was that to use the character and that like speaking the way you spoke, just that like whisper, that hard whisper?
Right. Well, remember, we're in the back seat of a limo. So it's not like we're in a larger space. We're in a small space too, right? So that creates a sense of closeness and intimacy that you might not feel in a larger room, if that makes sense. And I mean, for me as Eva, he was like a cult leader and I was a devotee, right? So I would do anything for him.
Yeah, you memorized the big game actually.
That's right, I did, because it was very important to my development as a person. Eva's development as a person. Let's
Right. Yeah, you would do anything for him, and it's Jason Alexander has been quoted to say that you were his favorite guest star over the 9-year run. So
Really?
pretty big kudos there from Jason.
Oh,
He tweeted that in 2011. So, and obviously, clearly you made an impact. So, and you mentioned that sensual scene, if you will. I'm ready to die for you. And what was it like? Your partner there, obviously, Peter Krause, got out to a lot of great things. How was it? How was it working with him? I mean, that was a pretty neat dynamic, both of you.
yeah, Peter was really fun to kind of, I'm going to say, bounce off of, you know? Um, that eyebrow thing that you should kind of remember. And he was very serious and he gave those looks. And, he kind of looked like, I mean, I guess I did too, but I wasn't looking at me. I was looking at him. He kind of looked like a young Nazi. Right? Um,
Yeah, yeah,
Great
for sure.
actor, really nice man. Yeah, I'm really happy for him. He's really done a lot of great stuff since.
Yeah, he did go on to some big thing. I mean, 6 Feet Under was obviously groundbreaking as well.
Yeah.
Your so take us into actually the shooting. Like you said, you're inside a limo, right? So was that in front of the audience? Like, did they just set something up where you guys are all sitting in it together? Did they do shots where they weren't in the car with you and they were just reaction shots, or was it really the four of you sort of in a tight space, like you mentioned, pretty much the whole shoot? Do you recall any of that? Like how they actually shoot that those limo scenes?
We were in a tight space, and there was an audience, um, but it was just very different, right? There was blocking, but it wasn't the same type of blocking as it would be when you're walking across to sit at a table and hit your mark. It was much smaller movements, right? Everything was tighter. It was of course darker because I mean it was lit, right? But it wasn't the same because it was supposed to look like we were really. I think it actually looked like we were really in the limo, right? So, and
Yeah,
we
agreed.
were in a set that looked like a limo.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned Larry Charles, obviously, who pretty much wrote the episode and was a major producer at this point on season 3. Um, and then you have Tom Sharonis, the director, and then you also have Larry David, who's the showrunner. Like in between those three, who did you feel like was doing most of that blocking or that directing or giving you notes? Like, did you have a rapport with any three of them or all three of them? Like, how did that work on set? Do you remember?
Well, so I did both two different shows, right? But on the limo, Larry Charles was more involved. He actually, he and his family, they were friends of mine for a while afterwards. Really nice people. And Tom was a great director. He was just a great director. Just he understood, Seinfeld, right? And he understood what was needed for the scene and for the episode, and he gave great direction. But he really kind of let us be free. I mean, it's pretty easy to bounce off of Jerry and Jason. I mean, they're so giving, and they're such good actors and so generous.
You put it perfectly. Generosity. I think that's the beauty of the show, and they let guest stars shine like you and Peter. And to me, the Limo and the Pie. I mean, they're flawless episodes. I mean, if I had to pick two to be in, boy, did you nail them? And we'll get a little bit into the Pie, but so you were doing a little like Murder She Wrote, Jake and the Fat Man, all that type of stuff. And you mentioned that Seinfeld was a show, and this is still early Seinfeld. This is season 3. They still didn't go to Thursday night yet, so it wasn't. You were getting a little less viewership on the Limo than you were on the Pie, but there was still that you could feel something big was happening here when you were on set.
Oh yeah, it was a big deal. It was just getting on Seinfeld, getting on audition was a big deal, but getting on an episode and being the guest star, that was a big deal. For me, I think when I got on and who I was studying with as an acting coach, a lot of people went to him. They asked me, who I was studying with, and they, immediately had more students because they wanted to get on, something like that. So it was
interesting.
It was a really big deal. And I went to a school in the Midwest called Northwestern University, and
Julia went there, right? Yeah.
Julia went there, and Julia was a senior when I was a freshman. And when I came on set for the table read, she recognized me because she remembered rushing me in her sorority.
Wow.
Funny.
That's great.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
That's great. Yeah, Midwestern. Yes, Northwestern is huge for drama. That's awesome. Yeah, very cool that she remembered you. That's great. Yeah, and I was just kidding. That leads me to my next question, actually, because the one scene in the Limo that gets me every time. I mean, the whole episode, as we said, is an all timer. It's
So
obviously
funny.
one of the best of the whole series. But the last scene is just when you and Peter Krause are pointing the guns and they're just going off. Jerry and George are just talking, and all 4 of them are in the car with you. That's kind of a big scene too, because you have Michael Richards, Julie, he just mentioned, plus Jerry and Jason, all in the same like little condensed area. I mean, how much fun was that? Like just take us through. I mean, we didn't really touch on Michael or Julia yet, so maybe from that scene alone, or just from your experience on set. I mean, that was incredible.
Well, the 4 of them together are so funny, right? So you have to really stay focused, or you're going to lose it. Just one of their faces or one of their mannerisms is going to make you crack up, right? And then their interplay between each other is so funny. Michael, I got to tell you, I would sit in the audience and I would maybe he knew I was there. I'd get really quiet. He would go on set and practice his entrances, right? Because he's always got those really cool entrances. And I would just sit there and watch him go back in and then out and then come back in and practice and decide how he was going to enter the room that day. Oh my God, he's so talented and so funny and so kind. So kind.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about that, and it's incredible how you mentioned Julia. You grew up in Illinois, right? And then moved out west, and then came back to Northwestern. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, how'd you end up? Well, as a girl from Park Ridge, Illinois, I believe, right?
So I was born in Park Ridge, but I grew up in a little further north in a place called Wilmette and Winnetka. And I went to Northwestern, and then I went out to LA. I did like a few things when I was at Northwestern. I got a movie called Class with Rob Lowe and John Cusack and Jeremy Piven and
oh wow,
Davidovich. Those were the guys that I hung out with. And then there was Jacqueline Bisset. And, so that was how I started. I just started working a little bit in film and TV while I was at Northwestern, and then I moved out to LA.
Wow. And
Started.
then obviously, Killer Clowns and In the Heat of the Night, all that stuff. Is there a preference between drama, comedy, or horror or sci-fi? Where do you kind of lean most or love most in acting?
I like doing sitcoms. I love doing comedy. I really love it. It's just the timing and everything. It's just super fun. And it's when you do a sitcom, you have an audience. So it's like you're doing a play. So you get to hear the audience's laughter. And so that's a lot of fun. And I have a lot of gratitude for the horror films that I've done because I go to conventions and it's nice to meet the fans and I met a lot of Seinfeld fans too, actually. But I would say sitcoms. If I had to pick one, it would be sitcom, hands down.
Yeah, and you heard a lot of laughter in the two Seinfeld episodes you were in for sure. So yeah, let us know. So the Limo again, an amazing episode. It sounds like you hit it out of the park on the audition. It sounds like you had that connection with Northwestern with Julia, as Christmas and Jason, had admiration for you. So it's no wonder you got brought back. But curious how that brought back happened. The season 5 bring you back for the pie. Tell us about that. I mean, I'm going to assume you didn't audition, but did you have to? Like, how did they just bring you back for the pie? Was that maybe you can tell us about that story, how you kind of got brought back for the next episode a couple of years later?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the pie is around this tiny little look that I believe a PA did in front of Larry, David, and Jerry. She wouldn't eat some and she did this look and they thought it was so funny that they wrote a whole episode around it. So I guess they hired someone to do it, and I guess she couldn't get the look right. So they fired her and they brought me in, and that was when I found out that I gave one of the best auditions they've ever seen, because they don't normally offer. I mean, not to people like me, right? They don't offer parts at Seinfeld. You had to audition. Most people had to audition because it was a big show. It was a big show. So they brought me in, and their one conundrum was that because I was playing a different part, they had to figure out how to make me not look like Eva. So we were trying on wigs. We were doing all this. So they finally decided they were just going to put a dark, spray temporary color in my hair. And that was what they did. And it worked. So, I mean, I was going to do it anyway. They weren't going to get somebody else, but that was just how were they going to make me look different, because I don't know how many different actors or actresses have done 2 different characters on Seinfeld playing 2 different parts. I don't know. I don't think there are many.
Not many, but one of them was actually in the same episode, and we spoke to her as well on the podcast. Christine Dunford, who played, the mannequin, the French accent, the whole thing. Yeah. She was in an earlier episode, played a different character as well. So you guys it's incredible. Rarefied Air, and you were both in the same episode as different characters.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of our, I mean, we talk about the Limo all the time, but the pie, we have a, soft spot in our heart because we spoke to Christine Dunford, we spoke to Mark Beltzman, we spoke to Sunday Theodore, with the nails. So I mean,
funny.
Yeah. So we've heard a lot of great stories on this episode, and this is a Gamble and Pro, so no more Larry Charles. But I'm assuming when you came back, I'm assuming you got welcomed back with open arms, and it was kind of like, was it a different? This is season 5 now. They're on Thursday night. Cheers is gone, #1 show, the whole thing. Was it a different feel, or did it still have that same kind of as Jerry likes to call it, like a homemade kind of feel of a show? Did you notice any differences from year 3 and 5?
I mean, I guess the only difference was that they kind of felt like they knew me this time. right? So they were even more welcoming, more like I was a part of the family. Like they were happy to see me again. And, how have I been? What have I been doing? I remember walking around the lot with Michael, just talking about, because I'd had a child by then and he had a daughter, and we talked about being single parents. And, there was just more of a closeness, I would say. Like Jerry and I had the same eye doctor, and we bump into each other at the eye doctor. And he wanted to ask all these questions about, why do girls carry water bottles in LA? They don't carry water bottles in New York. He would like ask me those kind of silly, funny questions and things like that.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, we've heard a few of these. I guess LA's in the end of things, it's just a small town like anything else, right? You run into a lot of these people. We've heard these kind of stories in passing where the schools, or like you mentioned, the doctor's office, things like that. Like, us as fans sometimes don't think about that. That it's just like a small town. I guess you guys will just kind of run into each other and that sort of thing.
Yeah, my son was at a school that Larry and his wife were looking at, or were gonna, they had their child at. They were looking at it, and then we talked about it. Not that I made them decide to go to the school or not, but they ended up going to that school. Just things like that. You bump into people when you're living there.
Right. And then yeah, that's it's interesting. The pie, as Chris mentioned, has so many guest stars in it, and it's such a great episode. And you mentioned that the look that kind of prompted the whole episode. And forgive me if this is repetitive, but you're saying you sort of just nailed that look on the audition, or sort of like gave them that look and they were like, okay, you got it, or did you have to work on that like throughout taping and rehearsals and stuff?
No, they hired me. They brought me in, they hired me for the job. And then they said, this is kind of what we're looking for. And I did it. And I remember Larry and Jerry going, see, I knew she could do it. Look. Doing that whole thing and be like, of course, Suzanne can do it.
That's great.
It was very, very nice. They were, that was one of the best sets to work on for sure. And the wrap party was amazing. We had it at the planetarium up in Griffith Park. The whole thing was just, for Seinfeld, and it was beautiful, and everyone was nice to talk to and hang out with. Jason's a very, very nice person too. They're all really nice, good people.
Yeah, we've heard about that observatory wrap party. That seems like it was an event.
Yeah, that was very cool.
Very cool. And then with now you did mention Larry a little bit there. I'm just curious, and Chris kind of touched on it, but when you were there for season 5, did you get a sense that they had, I don't want to say changed, but was there more confidence on? Was there anything that you could pick up on? Whereas like now they're almost like, I don't want to say elevated, but did they show in any way a difference in how they acted? Or because we've heard, you could tell us, but we've heard that they really were the same all the way through from people that are on different seasons. But I'm curious from your perspective if it was noticeable that they had more success, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. They were still just kind, interested, interesting, funny humans, just like anybody else. Jerry, wore his shoes. Jerry liked cereal. I mean, it was just the same, really. It was really the same.
Yeah, it's funny.
Nice.
It's funny you mentioned cereal. They're actually eating cereal in the pie episode after Jerry came back from his date with you, refusing to eat in one of the. Listen, there's scenes you remember, and then there's scenes you remember, right? With Poppy not washing his hands. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. And who knew? Poppy, by the way. Yeah, tell us about Poppy, by the way, who played your father, obviously, Rennie Santoni. May he rest in peace. But incredible actor, made such an impact, and obviously that scene with you, him, and Jerry, right up there with one of the best of all time, right?
Oh, he's just so funny. I mean, you can't imagine that name and not think of him. Do you know what I mean? Poppy's been in a lot of different things, but when you just think of he was Poppy. He was the Poppy, the,
Yes.
the
The
archetype of
outfit. Yeah.
Poppy,
Yeah.
or something like that. And yeah, it was easy to feel like his daughter. It was easy to feel like I'd grown up in a restaurant. All of it was just easy because of how he was.
Yeah, I can see
You know
that.
what I
He
mean?
had that. Yeah, he had that. He had that presence. It was definitely showed on screen anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so can you tell us why you didn't eat the pie? Did you have a reason in your head? Did they ever tell you like why you shook your head to Jerry's pie offer? You're
So
not
they
adverse
never,
to pastries.
right? They never found out why this person that they saw do that face wouldn't eat something. I just kind of made a creative choice, right? That it was like poison for me. Because if someone like I'm kind of like, okay, well, I may not like it, but if you really want me to taste it, I'll taste it. Do you know what I mean? So I had to make a really strong choice so that it would come out that way, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is though Kramer claims you went back and was eating the pie. So
Oh yeah.
I think it was just something against Jerry. I think you didn't something what wasn't vibing there. Yeah, you mentioned Poppy, such a fatherly figure, if you will, and yeah, you were at the restaurant doing the phone, and everything. It's interesting. That was Poppy's first episode. Your second. They brought Poppy back. Was there any, inclination of bringing you back? I mean, I know you broke up with Jerry, but you are Poppy's daughter for crying out loud. And they did have other restaurant scenes. I'm curious if there were any conversations about bringing you back in any capacity.
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. I am in the best of Seinfeld, so I did get three.
Oh, of course, yeah.
but,
Um,
but not in another restaurant scene.
yeah, I mean, just some really funny scenes. Obviously, the cop comes in, um, then Jerry's doing his thing, and you're kind of yelling at Jerry. But that's the beauty of the show. He kind of has a new girlfriend every week, but
Right.
for sure, you were the one that really kind of perplexed him, if you will, and he kind of brought out why he's such a curious guy. And I love that you kind of just gave him the stiff arm and just said, let's eat the duck. You know what I mean? But so if you had when you're thinking about it, the limo, the pie, do you have a favorite? I'm trying to guess based on our conversation so far. It's you have a good poker face. It sounds like you enjoy them both. But if you had to pick one, would you pick one?
I think it. Uh, gosh, they were both really fun, and I have really fun memories. Working, but also just hanging out with everyone in both. But if I was going to pick one, I'd probably pick the limo.
Ah, all right.
Yeah. I mean, the limo just has something, in my opinion, that's different that nothing else ever I've seen captures it, right? Like you brought it up at the beginning. It was unlike anything that we saw on TV to that point. I mean, you didn't get, like I keep saying, you didn't just get a guy pull out guns and that's a nice looking Luger. And, like you mentioned, like she's basically in a cult and George is the leader of it, unbeknownst to him. It's just an incredible juxtaposition of this little childlike like hijinks they're trying to pull turns into of all people's limo they get right. It's a neo-Nazi group.
Right.
It's incredible. And yeah, I can just imagine how much fun it must have been. Those scenes when you're like on top of George. I would take a bullet for you, and all of that. It just must have been so much fun working with them.
I think probably, and the reason why I say it is, it was such a big deal to get Seinfeld. So let's just say to get it was a really big deal. To be offered a Seinfeld was a huge deal, right? So both of those things meant a lot to me. But being in such close quarters with those guys for so long and having to interact with them and talk to them, you don't get to do that very much. I mean, I guess I got to do that Yeah, I mean, probably in Return of the Living Dead, right? With James Karen and Tom Matthews. And I have really great memories. Maybe when you're that close and you can't get away and you have to hang out and really talk, you get to know people better. And maybe that's why I feel that way.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned at these festivals you get recognized for Seinfeld,
Yeah.
and I'm just curious. There's a lot of Seinfeld nuts out there, as we know. Do they see you as Eva or Audrey, or do you get a mix of both, or do they know you're both?
Well, if it's for Seinfeld, they know it's both. I've had people bring in the menu from the diner to have me sign.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Or scripts to sign. And sometimes they have, like, there's certain quotes, right, that people want you to say that are more well known or more iconic for that show or that episode or that movie. But sometimes you get just a line you can't imagine that somebody wants you to say. But it's normally both. I would say normally when it's Seinfeld, it's both. They know it's both for sure.
Yeah. And we were we were big fans. If you to go a couple of years back of Family Ties and what was the Facts of Life you were in.
Yeah.
How different? And then boom, like Tony mentioned, you get to the set of Seinfeld, the limo. It kind of just felt different, right? It wasn't your standard sitcom. Like, was it? And again, Larry and Jerry weren't really sitcom guys like you would get from Family Ties, where they kind of wrap everything up in a nice bow, right? The limo ends with George getting attacked as leader of the Aryan Union. So I don't even know what my question is here, but I guess the question is, I mean, it must have just been so different. And what did you learn, I guess, from that first experience that you took with you kind of later in your acting career?
That's a great question. Um, for auditions, right? It was to really trust my gut and to go with what, even if it might seem kind of crazy, to if you have an instinct or an intuition to do something, to practice it and to follow through and to do it. That would be one of the things I learned. Um, you know, like a lot of these shows, when you work with people that have great celebrity, they're really famous, you realize that, they're just a normal person, like your mailman or the waiter or the doctor. I mean, that's just their job. And they're just really lucky in a way because they get to go to me on a sitcom. It's like you get to go and play and work really lovely hours. Whereas on the movie set, sometimes you might work really long hours. But this is like in a controlled environment. It's really nice. You know all the same people. You have to table read. Table read was so much fun with them.
Oh yeah, I can
Yeah,
imagine. Right. I
Those are
mean,
the two things. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
that's great to hear. And you mentioned lucky, but we're the lucky ones because you were a part of so many great iconic shows, and to be on two episodes of Seinfeld happen to be two of our favorite episodes, and make us laugh in completely different ways is such a testament to you. And after speaking with you tonight, it shows why people love working with you. So we see why Jason ranked you as his favorite guest star.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's that's a really big compliment. Thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I
Really
mean,
cool.
having you on with us, I
Proud of
could
that.
see why he said that. I mean, and just what you just said now, just about just perspective and being grounded and just knowing that, just because you're on that set and they're, it's Larry David, it's Jerry Seinfeld, but they are, like you said, just people who you're talking about school and eye doctors with and everything else, right? Like you mentioned. And I'm sure now with your, your wellness and your yoga center, you're helping a lot of people as well. And it's definitely commendable. We can see that you just radiate that sort of happiness and joy that you brought to us and our fans. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you both so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. This has been great, and we can't wait to share this with everybody.
Yeah, will you let me know when it's going to be on so I can see it?
Of course.
Thanks,
Have a great
guys.
night. Thank you.
Thank you
Have
so
a great
much.
night. Enjoy the lake.
Have a good night. Take care.